Okay, so if there's nothing specific that you want to mastermind around, then I did think that we would talk about negotiations. Now, some of the people that I know would benefit from this, I don't see them here, so hopefully they will benefit from the watching the recording. Hey, Ernie.
Hello.
Uh,
So
so before we get going, Ernie, is there something specific you need to mastermind around?
probably what you're talking about as far as the verbiage and the things that are happening.
Okay, cool. So we'll go over a few things. If questions come up as we're talking, please throw them out there because we want to make sure that we're answering your needs, situations that you have. But in negotiations, one thing for sure that I want everybody to understand is we all have the ability to negotiate. And most of us, if we have kids, are probably pretty good negotiators. Might not be real estate related, but that we have some skills with that, right? So, there are several things in a transaction that we could potentially have to negotiate around. So I wrote down a few of them to go over, but what are the key things that you see as negotiation points from the very first meeting of a client? Clear through close. What things do we negotiate on?
Price
Commission.
of the house and compensation.
Yeah, definitely. What else?
Timelines, maybe.
That definitely can be a negotiation. What else?
Selling price.
Okay. Welcome, Bruce and his in-law. Can you turn your cameras on, please? What else do we negotiate on?
Inspections, repairs.
Definitely.
Concessions.
Concessions. What if the appraisal comes in low? So there's a lot of different negotiation points along the way from very first meeting the client, right? Negotiating how what our compensation is going to be. And now we know that isn't just with the seller. We have to start doing that with our buyers right out of the gate. And even though we still technically have a few more days, if you are talking with a buyer before then, please just start doing this now because it would not be fun to have to go back just a few days later and redo this and have a whole new conversation. So please keep that in mind. So, do you have any specific questions around negotiating with your buyers for compensation?
We just had a, a thing at the office with Compass. I think it's the training thing, but it was but anyway, they started talking about, you know, the transactions and stuff, and say somebody was going to come up and wanted to buy this $3 million home, and it's a cash offer, but they didn't want to sign that exclusive buyer representation agreement. You know, I mean, you going to turn that down? It's like, and the other, they're offering a 2.5% or 3% on the other side, but you're actually, going to turn that down and not do it without getting them signed.
I don't know if I'm understanding what you're saying because what you're saying, the way I'm hearing that isn't computing to the new way of doing things.
Right. Well, I mean, but that's what, so like if a buyer, they want you to write up the offer,
Mhm.
right? And they've got 3,000, it's $3 million deal
Okay.
and it's cash, and they want you to write up the offer, but they're not going to sign that BRBC.
So what do you do?
I talk to my broker and see if I'm going to take it anyway.
No.
I'm
Did
going to turn
uh
that. I'm going to turn
It's the
eighty
law
thousand
now.
dollars
You have
down.
to do it.
The answer is no, you're not going to do it. You cannot. You absolutely cannot represent a buyer in any way, shape, or form moving forward without a buyer's representation agreement and compensation on it. Now, doesn't mean you can't negotiate the compensation with the seller, but you will no longer be able to, according to the settlement, according to CAR, and in January, it's going to become California law. Anything that is representation, and the three key things that denote representation is showing a property, writing an offer, doing a CMA. Now, this is according to Gov. Those things and many more, but those are the key things that create a representation relationship. And we will no longer be allowed to do those things without a BRBC or at a minimum, a PSRA signed for the particular property. It's just simply not allowed.
I have a question for you, Miss Jody.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so it's not allowed, but what if you're filling up the BRBC and then you go ahead and attach an SPVV on there before finding out if the seller can even if you can even successfully negotiate compensation through the seller, would that still allow you to have a relationship with the buyer's agent, if that makes sense?
So you cannot represent a buyer without a representation agreement of some sort, either a BRBC or a PSRA. Now, the one caveat to that is there is a space on the BRBC that you can check the box that the seller cannot afford to pay the buyer fees. Okay.
Oh, it's
Now, if that box is checked, you can represent them. And if it comes to writing an offer on a property and the seller will not pay your compensation, you do not continue the representation. That basically is explained on the BRBC, where if you're writing an offer where you are not getting compensated at all, that you do not have to continue representing them for that property.
Is it if the buyer can't pay?
If the buyer can't pay.
Yeah,
I've got it.
You said
Hang
seller.
on, let me get to the thing. I'm scrolling before I make you guys dizzy with sharing my screen. Let me get to the first page. Here we go.
Yeah, you said seller, so I don't know. I thought it's if the buyer can't pay.
Okay, well, I did say that, but I also said if in presenting the offer, the seller refuses to pay your fees.
Right.
Okay, so right down here.
it's up there.
Huh? Did someone say something?
That's you I was just saying that the seller can't pay.
Okay. Hold on. G2 right here. Or I'm sorry, yeah, G2. Other financial considerations. Buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay broker. If that is the case, not that they don't want to, but they don't have sufficient funds to pay, you check this box. Now, if this box is checked, you can still do your job. You can still represent them. However, you have to set the expectation with the buyer that you will only show them properties and write offers for them with a seller who is willing to pay your compensation that is listed here. You will not represent them with anyone who is not willing to pay compensation, because representing an agent or a client is legally binding, right? You have legal ramifications that could potentially happen. You cannot work for free. There isn't a broker out there who will allow it. You absolutely cannot work for free. So if this box is checked, the expectation must be set that we will look at any property where the seller has indicated they are willing to pay your compensation. Okay, let's go down to 9B so we can get further explanation. Buyer obligations good faith. Remember, this is where we don't write offers on more than one property just because they're afraid of not getting accepted. We don't do that. Okay, financial and personal information. Within the time specified, buyer shall provide relevant personal and financial information, including but not limited to proof of funds needed to complete the purchase of the property and satisfy the obligation to pay broker. Okay, so basically this is G2G1. They're proving they can do the down payment, the closing costs, and pay your fee. Okay, but if either box is checked in paragraph 2G, meaning they can't afford to pay all of that and your fees, okay? A, buyer agrees to include in a term in buyer's offer requesting seller to compensate buyer broker. So that is part of your negotiation. It is understood it will be part of it. And for a transaction, this agreement is contingent upon seller or others or both agreeing to pay broker the full amount the buyer is contractually obligated to pay the broker. The contingency is in favor of the broker, and broker may elect to cancel this agreement related to representation on that specific property. If the seller does not agree to pay the full amount that buyer is contractually obligated to pay broker, broker shall inform buyer, seller, and listing agent that buyer is proceeding without representation, if they choose to, and that they shall complete a new agency confirmation removing broker as representing buyer. So does that clarify the question that you had?
Yeah.
And Ernie, did that clarify what you were asking?
Well, yeah, I'm just, on a legal and constitutional aspect, I can't believe they agreed on this stuff and wrote this because there's gonna be issues down the road. But I'm not gonna turn down I'd pay the $2,500 fine for an $80,000 commission. You know?
But here's the
You know what
thing,
I'm saying?
Ernie, no one wants you to turn away a commission. That's not the point.
But I mean, but you are, if the guy's not gonna sell, he's just gonna go to the other, and take care of it with some other
Okay,
way.
but how are you getting a commission? If the buyer's not gonna pay you and the seller's not gonna pay you, where's your commission coming from?
Well, you're not getting, that's, if the buyer, they just don't wanna sign the BRBC, the exclusive
You
agreement.
cannot show them property. You can't write an offer. It will be illegal. You can't do it.
That's what I'm saying, but
Yeah, it's just, and that's not a matter of we don't want to help somebody. That's just us complying with the new settlement. We absolutely cannot do anything, any activity that creates a agency relationship if they refuse to sign a BRBC or a PSRA. Now, if they don't want to sign a BRBC, then you can use language such as, okay, first of all, find out why, right? Because
Mhm.
maybe they don't understand. So, okay, usually, Mr. Buyer, when somebody doesn't want to sign the agreement, it's because maybe I haven't explained everything. Do you still have some questions? Right? Because oftentimes that's why people don't want to sign something.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know you well enough yet. Maybe you just met them on a sign call and they don't know you well enough to commit. Okay, then you know what? Here's what we can do instead. I have a single representation, a single property representation agreement that you can sign. So if this allows me to represent you for this property, so I can show it to you. If you choose, I can write an offer and negotiate on your behalf. However, for anything else, I wouldn't be able to help you unless you signed the BRBC. But what we can do is go ahead and you sign this. It still has the fee that you're going to have to pay the brokerage if you move forward with this house. So how about we do this? And if you like how I handle everything, then we can talk about the BRBC so I can fully represent you.
Mhm.
But we just simply can't do it. It's not because we don't want to help people. It's because now we're told you can't. You'll be in big trouble if you do it. It's a $2,500 fine with no questions asked and no warning, if you're caught showing property or writing an offer for somebody you don't have a BRBC for.
Mhm. Yep.
Michelle, do you have a question?
I do. With the BRBC, if they say they don't have the funds to pay, is that still a 30-day or whatever you write in their agreement on that property?
So if they don't have the fund, yeah, so each agreement is different. The BRBC, you can have up to 3 months. It's not 90
Mhm.
days, it's 3 months.
3 months, okay.
So anywhere in there, and then the PSRA is up to 30 days. So and anywhere in there. So whatever you write it in for is what it's good for.
I guess what I'm wondering is if someone says they don't have the money or they sign the smaller agreement for 30 days, what's to stop buyers or consumers in the big picture from going and using an agent? Obviously, okay, I'm doing this as a freebie. You take them into a house and then they go back and say, okay, let's wait our 30 days and we're going to cut out the, $20,000-$30,000 commission.
Well, okay, I'm not saying that can't happen or won't happen, and that would be terrible if that happened. My first instinct is if that happened, you didn't want to work with that person anyway.
Mhm.
Right. So secondly, if somebody's willing to lose a property to wait till your agreement runs out, then they really didn't want it anyway. Or, I mean, they're really risking, especially in this market, not having that property available. So could it happen? Might it happen? Will it happen
Yeah,
0.1% of the time? Maybe. And I don't think it's going to be a big enough deal to be concerned about.
thank you.
Yeah, you guys, there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on that is we don't necessarily like, we don't necessarily understand, but we have to comply. And this will get better. Maybe this will make you feel better. So none of you have been around the industry long enough to know what I'm gonna say, but I'll kind of give you a little history because I think this is important to understand. I saw on Facebook the other day a post, and it was about the new NAR and how, we can't put the commissions in the MLS and how everybody's freaking out about that. Well, then somebody commented, change the way you look at things and you see a lot of opportunity. Okay, so that one is a phenomenal thing, right? Because the bold law, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. But the comment that really struck me was a lender had made a comment about this makes me remember back in the days when when escrow and lending had to comply with the TRID. I forgot what that stood for. But it was a new thing that literally the entire industry freaked out about. And it was, I think, in the early 2000s, 99, early 2000s when this happened. And essentially if I remember correctly, because when I read this, here's the thing. The comment was everybody freaked out, and now it didn't take long. It just became business as usual, and everybody went back to work, and it just is what it is. It had been so long ago that we've been doing things that way that I had completely forgotten about that. Essentially, what it was, if I remember correctly, is we didn't used to have a CD, a closing disclosure. Well, there was always a closing disclosure where the funds were approved by the buyer, right? This is for the loan and all that. There was always that. However, we didn't have to wait 3 days to sign loan docs once that was done. You could get it, sign your loan docs, get funded, get closed. Well, the TRID, whatever that stood for, meant now the closing disclosure had to go out and a buyer could not sign loan documents for 3 days once that went out. So everybody freaked out that, oh my gosh, this is going to mess up our timelines. What happened to, I mean, it was a mess in the industry. People were flipping out. But all of you don't even know any different because that's just exactly how we've done business for the last 20 odd years. Right? This is going to be that. There's going to be bumps in the road. It's going to get figured out. And then we just go back to business as usual, which we're doing anyway. So I just thought that was a good little piece of perspective to put on this, because that was a big deal back then. Oh, thank you. She looked it up. Yeah, all the rest of the stuff. That was when, title companies used to pay for everything under the sun. Oh my goodness, they paid for everything. And they can't pay for anything anymore. They can't do anything for us unless it has their, they can give us pens and pads of paper that have their logo on it, but they can't take us on trips. They can't, there's a lot of things they can't do they used to do. So, but we survived. And we will survive and we will thrive. Because remember, guys, even though there's going to be some bumps in the road, the overall principles of what we're changing to are actually going to benefit the industry. So
I agree, Jodi. There was a really good message on our way to Minnesota we were listening to from Tom Ferry from last week, and he had a board of executives on there that he was interviewing. And it is all perspective. And one of the things was if people could realize the transparency and, explain that to the consumer, that everything's out there for you to see and it's to protect you, then it's not feeling so threatening to go to someone and say, hey, do you mind signing this BRBC? This is what you pay for. This is what they pay for, and explaining it to them, opposed to like, oh my gosh, I don't want to say anything because now I'm not going to get a commission, where you're just looking at it for what's best for the consumer. And you're going to be able to walk into that with confidence and not feel afraid to tell them. So anyway, that was my 2 cents.
yeah, awesome. Thank you. And something that there's a practice this is going to stop, and it's a practice that has always bothered me personally. And yet so many agents do it. There are so many listing agents that would take listings for 6%, but only offer 2.5% to the buying side.
Mm-hmm.
And they claimed they needed that extra 0.5% for marketing and for admin help and this, that, and the other. No, that's your cost of doing business. You don't harm your seller by taking 0.5% away from what you're offering the other side to bring you more buyers. I have always been against that practice. Me personally, it didn't stop everybody from doing it, but I've always thought that was not fiduciary. They explained it away and they got people to sign their agreements. That's fine. But this is going to stop that because of what you just said, the total transparency.
Right. Yeah, there's the thing, the career compass thing that we just had for the ethics certificate, and they talk about the 7%. That's quite interesting as far as giving a 4% commission, the 3%, and it's been working to where they're getting way more money on the property. So because it's giving the incentive. So there's something to be said about giving the buyer, compensation for bringing me a qualified buyer, or the buyer's agent bringing me a qualified buyer.
Yeah.
And then so it'd be interesting. I'd like to get to the point to where I can present somebody and try it. Say, because if he doesn't work, we'll just go right back to the other. But these guys are getting tons of money, and 3 or 4 of the guys that are doing it are large Keller Williams producers.
Mm-hmm.
And so
well, I know one of the brokers, some of you on this call know Troy. He's the broker in my market center and 2 of our other market centers. I've known him for as long as I've been in the business. And he would do that often. When people would bring up a commission objection, he would say, oh yeah, my commission's negotiable. Shoot, you can pay me 7, 8, 9, 10% if you want. And then and they'd laugh, they'd get a laugh out of it. And he goes, no, I'm really serious. Here's why you might want to think about 7%. And as he says, I promise you, if you list your property with me for 7%, I won't keep a penny over 3%. The rest of that will go to an incentive to get us a buyer to pay you top dollar on your house. Right. And so that's the way to do that. Nobody's trying to get more money out of a seller for themselves, or I should say nobody should be trying to do that. If you're a fiduciary and wanting to do the best job, standard of practice has always been whatever the listing commission is, half of it goes to the other side. And then in this last decade or so, with, more and more teams and them paying admin, well, what happens is instead of people growing their teams the way they should grow them for profitability and not start to grow them till they're in a place where they can pay for those things properly, they start tacking on fees to the seller. That's not good. So
Well,
this,
and another thing too is the discount brokers and Zillow and all them came in and sort of brought the competition out there. More real estate agents came in thinking, okay, we can do all this stuff, and then everybody started discounting and cutting down the market share and saying, oh yeah, the one percenters and all that, and it's like it I mean, in certain industries, if you do that, you'll get chastised by the other people around you and get pushed out or what have you because you're doing that, because you're undercutting. I mean, you don't see plumbers doing that. It's
so
it's
here's what happens. So that's a really good point, Ernie, but
yeah.
and you're going to see it happen, almost guaranteed. But what'll happen is they will come in, they'll undercut a handful of people, they'll get some business, they'll take a little bit of market share. Do not worry about those people. Do not lower your value in your fee because they're going to take a handful of deals, because they will disappear. The ones that did it for listings and stuff in the past, the help you sells, the whatever those things were called, they all disappeared, right? And now there's still a help you sell, I think, in our area, but they do normal commissions. And here's the thing, those low-end leader 1%ers, what they don't tell people is, oh yeah, we'll do this for 1%, but if you want this, and this, they can end up paying more than they'll pay you.
Well,
So
yeah, the discount brokers on, over that they're saying, we'll give you a cash offer for a short deal, and it's like no commission, but there's that $35-40 or $35,000-40,000 service fee on top of you end up paying way more than paying an agent, if you look at all the fine lines and.
oh yeah, so the bottom line is we just don't need to worry about that. It'll happen. It'll be a little bit, it'll just be like a little pinprick, and then it'll be over because they'll go away. And because from an economic business standpoint, those types of businesses can't last the long term. What they'll do is they'll come in and take advantage in the short term, and then they'll be gone. But remember, price is only an issue in the absence of value. And so that's part of your negotiating, right? You have to be able to explain your value. And I know we talk a lot about value, but it isn't just, oh, I have a super key and I can open the door for you and I can do this and I can do that. All agents can do that, right? What sets you apart? What makes you different? And they also have to understand how much work goes into this, right? Sellers typically get paid more because sellers' agents are undercutting buyers' agents the way we were previously doing it. But buyers' agents do way more work than sellers' agents. Way more work. And yet they're paid less. Well, guess what? Now you get to get paid what you're worth. Nobody has to tell. That's the one thing I think we all forget about in this. Now we get to say what we get paid. And if we're not okay working for less and a buyer isn't going to pay us, we don't have to work with them. Whereas before, our fiduciary duty was, if a buyer wanted to see this house and that house, and then you turn around and it had a 1.5% commission, I know that was rare, but for the sake of the point, right? You were stuck with that. It didn't matter. Now you get to set how much you get paid. And if terms need to be negotiated, okay, you can do that later. But never, never, never lower your fees, your compensation out of the gate, ever. Don't devalue yourself, because remember, whatever's on your BRBC or your PSRA, if the seller side is willing to pay more, you're not going to get it if your BRBC doesn't say that. So make sure you're not devaluing you. Ben, what did you say?
How can you ask how much you're gonna get paid if you're working with the buyer?
So you have to put what you will be paid, what you will charge as your fee on the BRBC.
BRBC.
The buyer needs to agree to that, and it's negotiable, but
Well,
I'm
let me,
not changing what I charged before
Yeah.
over it because it's all fees have always been negotiable, right? I'm not changing anything, nor should any of you.
Yeah.
And the way that we can present this is, well, okay, Mr. Buyer, in this my fee is X% in order to work with me because I'm going to do this, this, and this. And here's also what I'm going to do for you. In all likelihood, and I can't promise, we will be able to negotiate in your offer with the seller to pay this fee for you. And so I'm going to do my very best to either get this fee paid for you or at least partially paid for you so that you won't owe the entire amount. Now, if a seller's willing to get, if you have 3% on your BRBC and a seller's willing to give you 1.5%, that doesn't mean you're going to work for 1.5%. That means now the seller's going to kick in 1.5%, so the buyer has to pay the difference, but you're still helping lower what they need to pay.
Another question, which form do they need to sign in order to see the house besides the BRBC? What other form do you need for like
So
three properties or something?
that's the ideal one. That's the one you want because that's where they can work exclusively with you. But if they won't sign that, you can get the PSRA signed. That's for a single property.
P what? PS?
PSRA,
Yes. That's for one property?
up to 3, 1 to 3.
1 to 2.
Yes.
Jody, I had a quick question with that. If you put the 3% on your BRBC and then the buyer is willing to pay that or part of that, you obviously can renegotiate the rest of it later, right? Or change that percentage. Does that make sense?
You mean if the seller's willing to pay part of it?
Like you should always start with 3%, right? And then, yeah, then you can maybe change it.
You can modify it. You can modify it down, but you should never modify it up. So like if you
Right,
put
okay.
2.5 and found out you could get paid 3, you're not going to modify it to 3.
Right. So I'm trying to go the other way. Start with
Right.
3. Okay.
Yes, you can negotiate that, right? And be careful because you
Okay.
don't want to start becoming the discount broker either.
Right. Okay.
So if they truly can't afford it, if it's truly standing in the way of their getting the home, of course you can negotiate that.
Mhm.
But don't just do that out of the gate.
No, of course not. I just was thinking, because what I'm hearing is that, you can start with the 3% and then the buyer will pay, like you were saying, part of that. Then I can just change the remainder to fit whatever the buyer needs, so long as I'm not going below like 2.5.
You
Is that-
can. You
okay.
can. I just and it's a case by case, but I wouldn't make that a practice. I would set it up and set the expectation that we're going to do our best to get this fee negotiate paid for you, or at least as much as possible. And so you'll only be responsible for the difference. Now, if they have told you up front, they're fine with that. Don't even bring up, oh, if I get at least 2.5%, I'll waive the other 0.5%. Do
No,
not
of course.
be signed by doing that. And the
Okay.
reason I say that, by the way, not to say you would, Kate, but
Okay.
I'm hearing a lot of people say that's what they want to do. They
Oh.
want to put 3% to get them to put 3%, but promise up front, if they get at least 2.5, they will waive the other 0.5%. That's the same thing as discounting yourself out of the gate.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
So don't use that as a tactic to get.
No. Yeah. I understand. Perfectly understood. Thank you.
And I wanted that on the recording for all to hear that watch this. Okay. Okay, so before we move on, because there's lots of other things to talk about with negotiation, any other questions about that specifically? Okay, and Ernie, thanks for bringing that up. And I'm sorry if I just was like, no, but I wasn't sure if I understood exactly what you were saying, and I wanted to make sure that we all understood. It doesn't matter. We just have to have the form signed. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's the it's those back conversations about the NRA signing this down this, down the river and screwing us, and the, CAR falling in the suit and all that stuff. And then, I mean, realistically, a lot of it won't hold up in court. If it
Well,
went,
remember, I don't think anybody's selling us up the river or whatever that phrase is. I
Yeah.
think that there's reasons that people settle because sometimes settlements protect people and save lots of other money that's not spent, right? And CAR isn't just following suit. CAR is required to follow suit, right? And every state's association of realtors is required. So it's not just about everybody's falling in line. We have to, because it has now become what's required.
Mhm. I just got a letter from a lawyer right down here in Orange County, and saying they filed a class action to get in that. And if you sold a house within a certain amount of time, uh, contact us because you're eligible for a class action suit. Now, so that there, it's not going to add on more money, right? It's coming out of that 418,000. They're trying to tag on, or 418 million. They're just trying to tag onto that.
But you guys remember
More and more.
this probably wasn't even an actual seller that ever brought this to the fore. This is an ambulance chasing lawyers that have done this. They have convinced sellers this was in their best interest. The same sellers who, when they sold their home and bought another one, didn't pay their agent's commission because that seller did.
Right.
This is just a bunch of ambulance chasers trying to make some money, and it's all going to wash out. In the meantime, we do what we need to do to stay compliant.
Right.
And just not listen to the noise, do our lead generation, talk to our clients, get good at negotiating, and we're okay.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
okay. One point I wanted to make, because I heard something along the in the last week or so. You don't need to be afraid to negotiate because another agent may have years of experience on you. Okay. I hear sometimes some agents, whether you've been in the business 5 days or 5 years or whatever, and then you come up with an agent that has been in the business 20 years and you're like, oh my gosh, who am I this? Who am I that? Here's the thing. Let me tell you a story. A couple of you might have heard this. Ernie probably has. Of several months ago, I sold a home for some friends. Well, actually, I helped them buy the home. And and when we went to close, the list agent, or I'm sorry, the sellers were still in the property. And we're like, wait a minute, you told us they were going to be out. They were supposed to be out before we recorded, all this stuff. So we go, and they're not even done emptying out the house, loading the moving truck. And we even gave them a couple extra hours. So I asked when they thought they would be out, and they said, oh, our agent said that we had until 5 o'clock. I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, well, actually, you were supposed to be out by the time we recorded. According to our contract, what time do you think you can be out? I'm not going to argue with the sellers. Their agent told them something wrong, right? So we're just trying to make the situation good. So I called the agent. And I knew who she was. I'd been working with her for this time, and this is why this was so shocking to me. She says, oh, well, no, they have until 5 o'clock to get out according to the purchase agreement. And she tells me, I've been doing this for 25 years and they have until 5 o'clock. And I said, okay. I said, well, actually, a year and a half ago, our purchase agreements changed to where they have to be out when it records, unless we checked a box to let them stay longer, which we didn't do. So they actually should have been out by the time escrow confirmed recording. And I was like, I wanted to say, I've been doing this 26 years, but I didn't, because really, when people start throwing at you, and hear this, guys, when people start throwing at you how long they've been in the business as a means of combating or trying to make themselves look good, they probably have done a deal a year for 20 years. They probably don't even know what they're doing. And I can't tell you how many so-called seasoned agents do not know what they're doing. And you guys in having to write offers and things will come across this. Agents have been around 20 and 25 years, think they can't tell you how much an offer is to help their seller get a better price. They'll tell you they cannot do it. Did you have a non-disclosure sign with them? Well, no, but we just can't do that. Well, actually, yes, you can. The PSR or the so many things, the PRBS says that you can and you should to help your seller get a better price. I'm not going to argue with somebody, but the only point is don't let somebody that has a lot of experience, so-called experience in this business, intimidate you. Especially if they're sitting there going, well, I've been in this business for 20 years. Because that just means they haven't done very much.
It says, well, then there's a good chance that you become complacent. It's like,
I'd be careful
oh,
how
are
I
you,
respond.
are you keeping up with all the new stuff then?
But just be careful, guys. Don't
Yeah.
just know that you have all the help you need. It doesn't matter how long someone else has been in the business. You have all of the support that you need to be as experienced as they are. You're probably more experienced even if you've never done a transaction than some of them, just from what you've learned. Yes, Kate, always take the high road.
Yes.
So the only reason I shared those couple little experiences is because I want you to understand, do not let agents intimidate you when it comes to negotiating, because some unfortunately will try, but don't let it intimidate you. Just come to us and say, hey, this is what they said. How do I handle this? And we'll help you.
You know what? Added to that, don't let clients intimidate you, because like, I mean, they'll flat out say, because there's the guy that's putting the flyer on the door every single day, and the guy that's, you know, the Tim Morrison around here, and the guy at the donut shop says, well, you're not Tim Morrison. You know, when I was talking to him about real estate in there, because Tim goes in there and gets donuts from him weekly and gives them out at the elementary school. And I said, I don't need to be, you know, I said, because I can do just as better, if not better than him right now. And, you know, be honest with you, I probably could do better.
Yeah, well, you know what? I would say, you know what? You're right. I'm Ernie Jackson.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
anybody that's
exactly.
been thinking about needing to make a move, I would just let it go. And I would just, I mean,
Yeah,
we got to be careful. We always want to take the high road in how we respond, for sure.
yeah.
Bruce, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to your situation with your friend that you helped out, and it sounded like you talked straight to the seller. Now, as a buyer's agent, are you allowed to go straight to the seller for questions, or do you have to go through the
No, no, no,
no?
no. The only, no, very good question. And thank you for asking.
Mhm.
Yeah,
No, agents should be the ones talking to each other. But that was a situation we had already recorded. It was the day of close and we were there. The seller was there. Also, you have to understand in this circumstance, the seller had been present at all of our inspections. The agent was aware of that. We didn't really talk to them except, you know, how are you? Are you having a good day kind of a thing. We didn't address them with questions. But this was a situation that was already recorded. They should have been gone. So I had to ask, okay, when do you plan to be out? I was trying to, you know, make the situation copacetic for everybody, right? And then I said, you know what? Well, let me just call your agent and you know, so I did. So she knew I was there with the seller. So you do have to be very careful, and so glad you asked that question, because agents should never talk to the other client without permission from or knowledge of the other one, the client, the other side's agent.
gotcha. Okay,
And
so
even then, it's not a good idea, by the way, without the agent present. It will come up very rarely. It has come up from time to time. I've had an agent tell me, oh no, you can talk to the seller about anything you want. I'm like, okay. So just be careful with that one.
I see. Okay, because I got hopeful there because I'm dealing with an agent, a seller agent that's really to himself. He keeps everything to himself, and when I want a question answered, he'll answer around it, and
Mhm.
it's just I'm like struggling here. And if I could just go to the seller, that would make my day easier.
No, you
But
absolutely
so I
cannot.
can't. Okay,
No,
Good. Thank you.
absolutely. So thank you for asking that question.
Isn't that crazy though, that guy that they're like that? Cause you think, I mean,
It's crazy.
it's,
Like,
I mean, you want to just go, do you want to sell the house or not? You know,
Yeah.
right. Like,
let's talk about
offer
this thing.
me,
I mean, in fact, you could probably say that, just, you know what? Hey, look, let's talk about this and get this house sold. Let's get this deal done. What do you need? Or what,
right,
and set them kind of just set the guidelines and say, hey, let's negotiate here. Let's talk about this. What do you need?
right. That's
Stop
what
being,
I'm saying. Like,
I mean, I
I want
flat
to
out
know.
say, stop being so
But
not
many agents,
transparent.
unfortunately, many agents won't do that. And it's sad because they are, excuse me, they are not being a fiduciary to their client.
Yep.
So the only way that you cannot talk about pricing or things or share information on other offers or what your seller needs is if they signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. 99% of the time, that's not done. I don't know what the actual percentage is, but it's almost never done. It happens sometimes. It happens sometimes in high dollar multiple offer negotiations. It just recently happened on the coast. But it's so rare. And I don't understand why agents don't want to help out their clients. But also you have to
I
understand
can
a
I
lot
can
of
see
these.
about sharing personal information, like, I mean, but
No,
think
you
about
do
the housing
that. But you
transaction.
share information that will help get a better offer.
Correct.
And that is okay
Um,
to do.
Sorry for cutting you off there.
That's okay. That's totally okay. But this is just an example. You guys, I hope you understand what you have at Keller Williams because we do as much as we can to stay abreast of everything out there and bring you the latest and the greatest, even if it's not the greatest, okay? But making sure that you know how to do your job properly. Making sure that you're up to date on everything. I promise you, so many brokerages out there don't do that. That's why there's so many agents out there that have been in this business forever and still don't know what they're doing. And I don't mean that meanly to those agents. And partly it's not their fault. They haven't partnered with the right people to learn what they need to learn. And we don't know what we don't know. However, the situation that I mentioned with the gal that said, "Oh, I've been in this business for," she told me, "I don't know how long you've been doing this," which she probably did. She said, "But I've been doing this for over 25 years and da 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 da." And I was like, have you read the RPA? You guys, you got to read the documents. Don't fill out, sign, or have a client sign a document you haven't read. I don't care if it's 16 pages. Read it. It's malpractice to not know what these documents say. And if you have questions about what something means, please ask, because that's what we're here for. Who'd we lose? We just lost somebody. Oh, Rochelle might be on her lunch. Okay.
That's what you mean. I should had to go back to work.
Okay. Okay, guys. So we barely scratched the surface and we didn't even truly get into a negotiation discussion a little bit. So we will continue this next week. Because I want to make sure we have a good discussion on negotiations. But was what we talked about helpful to you?
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The
And
the biggest thing was that on that 3%, it's easier to go backwards than forward on that,
Yeah,
to put
absolutely.
that there and then and then you look like a rock star when, say if they don't have enough, you say, okay, well, you know what? I'll let you off on the other 5% or something like that,
Yeah.
and then they're like, wow, you're so nice. I said, you know what? Don't just share that I took care of you, but don't tell everybody that I gave you,
Great. That's really important, guys. If you ever make a decision, and I see that, Bruce, if you ever make a decision to help a client out and it's necessary to get the deal closed, and I'm not saying don't ever do that. There are circumstances, right? But make sure that you set the expectation such that this is not something that I normally do. So the only way that I'm going to agree to do this for you is that you don't tell other people about this because this isn't I mean, I can't make a living if I did this for everyone, but I do want you to get into this house and I want to help you, so I'm going to do this for you, right? Set that expectation. Don't become known as the person, oh, go call Ernie because you know what? He'll lower his commission if the seller won't pay anymore. You don't want to be known as that person. So make sure you have the conversations. Okay. Bruce, what was your question?
Well, it's more of like a scenario for a negotiation. And I wanted to see if we could if you could put yourself in a seller's position and
Okay.
see if the offer it sounds attractive.
Okay.
Okay. So in this scenario, if you're the seller, I'm offering you, if your purchase price of the property is 2.8 mil, I'm gonna be offering you 14% above asking with a possible carryback since the seller allowed the carryback. So 14% above asking with 5% interest on the duration of the carryback, meaning they'll get that much more extra. Now with that 14%, buyer is wanting to request a 10% occurring concession, which would be through a private lender, because we're dealing with commercial as well. So he might be approved for that, but it's a lot. 10% back, and the 4%, the leftover 4% will go towards closing costs for the seller side, so that it'll help him out. So is that pretty appealing, or is that like like looking at it on paper, the seller is still walking out after closing, after agent fee over asking?
So here's the thing. On paper and as stated, yes, it's an appealing offer. However, it depends on the seller situation. If the seller owns the property free and clear or doesn't own much, it's a very good offer. And maybe he owes more on the property and isn't willing to do that because by the time he pays off what he owes, now he's just stuck with whatever the buyer's paying him monthly instead of cash in his pocket. Or maybe the seller just doesn't want to deal with having to worry about if he's getting paid every month and if he's not having to take back the property and do all that. So there could be multiple reasons why that would not look attractive to a seller, and there's reasons why it would. So it's only attractive to the seller if the seller's okay with that scenario.
I hear you. Okay, so seller, to update, seller is okay with carryback or seller financing. So now, I do know that the seller's title is free and clear with hefty equity on the property. So I don't see why the offer shouldn't be appealing, right?
Okay, so
No,
then what's holding you back from just writing the offer and
I
saying,
just wanted to make sure that, because when I want to write an offer, I don't want it to be countered or anything, and
here's
I want it
here's the thing though, Bruce, you can't control that. So
right,
all you can do is have a conversation. This is for any property, right? And it's very good that you talk to the seller on this one because carrybacks aren't common, right?
right,
So all you can do is talk to the list agent, present your scenario, get as much information as possible, and then you have to work with what you have. So you're at a point now where you just need to write the offer your buyer wants you to write.
okay,
Then you give it to the seller, and the seller's either going to accept it, reject it, or counter it. And that's okay. It's a starting point.
right,
If you just keep trying to get the seller's agent to tell you something and he won't tell you, now what happens if somebody else comes in the meantime and gives a better offer than your buyer's wanting to give? So I would just at this point stop worrying about it because you have done the legwork to try to find out as much as possible from what I can tell. Just
right,
write the offer and get the ball rolling.
right, and it also helps because buyer's comp is included right now for 2.25. That's why the buyer wants to come in so strong in the asking price, because then he can compensate the seller for my comp and and closing costs. And that's what we're trying to do here. We want a strong offer that they can't possibly reject with the scenario that we have right now.
Well, then
So-
it's, I think it's just time to write the offer.
I think so too.
It's
Well,
like-
so this is my first,
That,
this is my
I
first
saw,
transaction.
you know what, I
so
saw it on WhatsApp and I'm surprised you haven't submitted it already because
I can't. I don't know.
you know
I
what's
gotta
gonna
figure it
happen
out.
is like she said, somebody's gonna come in, there's another buyer that's gonna come in and put that offer out there and then yours isn't gonna be worth it. So you're not gonna get a counter or anything. You're just gonna get a flat out denial because somebody put a better offer in. You're gonna lose
Yep.
the deal.
Yeah,
Get
so
it out, write it, man.
really just
That-
time for you to write the offer. So here's what my recommendation is. Write the offer to the best of your ability based on what you know. Okay, I know you're okay. Submit it to PC Ask a Coach. We're gonna go through it with a fine tooth comb. Okay, so we're gonna get back to you on anything that needs to be adjusted. Do not have your client sign it till we have reviewed it and we went over it with you. Okay.
You got it.
But the
Okay.
reason we have you do that first is when we sit and do it with you, you don't learn near as much about the contracts as when you do it on your own. And then we're the backup to help you. We're never going to let you submit an offer that shouldn't be submitted, okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
Bruce,
Okay,
if you
guys.
need any help, I would take a referral fee to you and I can write the offer for you, just to throw it out there.
All right.
No,
Yeah.
no.
I'll learn this myself for now.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, at 2.8 million, you haven't written it yet? Wow.
I'm nervous. This is my first transaction, so
Okay,
I gotta
Bruce,
make
but
sure.
you have the collective group is telling you just to go write the offer, okay?
Yes.
Well, now I
yes.
will. Well, now I will. Thanks, guys. That's
Okay,
all.
thank you, everyone. Have a great
Thank you.
week. Those of you in the Meggers group, CB's doing his class right now if you want to join, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.